Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Action Comics issue 1068 by Gail Simone, Eddie Barrows, Rainbow Rowell and Sian Tormey. Superman faces insurmountable odds as the alien warrior Grunha and his empire threaten Metropolis by dropping a mega carrier onto the city of tomorrow. Gail throws us right into the action here as Superman has to come up with a way to catch the impossibly heavy carrier and fast, since the ship is nuclear, meaning if it hits the city and explodes, it will nuke half the state. I really like this slightly depowered Superman. It's a Fleischer era Superman, if you will. You know, he's still quite strong, but is not as strong as the present day Superman, and he's very underexperienced as well, and he's still unsure of how to handle situations like this. So he's got a lot of variables to think about when he has to save people, and even when faced with something like that, he still gets on with it because he loves his city and its people. As Superman thinks about what to do, Grunha activates the gravity of the ship, causing it to drop like a stone. Gale gives Superman such a golden age moment here, as to stop the ship, Superman must use his super speed to support the ship at several different angles all at once, making sure the boat doesn't snap in half or fall apart under its own weight as it splashes down in Metropolis Bay. One thing Gale really excels at in my eyes is giving the hero or heroes that she writes a really on point heroic moment that feels like, yeah, this is like a Superman moment, this is an X-Men moment. She's really good at those sorts of things, and she does it really well here with Superman having saved the city from this big, massive, insurmountable threat and saved everyone in the process in doing it. It's something only really Superman can do. Gale follows this up with another brilliant moment where the people of Metropolis find and help Superman out of the bay, reminiscent of the train scene from Spider-Man 2. Superman being alive though angers Grunha and decides to give him the next challenge, which will test his intelligence. Jimmy and Lois meanwhile are teleported onto the social level of the villain's ship, which they find is basically like a sports betting bar, but Lois is more interested in the story around it, getting straight into investigating if this game Superman finds himself in is rigged or is a fair fight. It's a great idea just to do a classic Lois Jimmy, you know, running around, running down a story, getting leads and everything, but changing the setting from the streets of Metropolis to an alien ship in space. It adds an unknown factor to the side of their adventure since, you know, it's an unknown place for them. How do these aliens act? Where can we go? What's their deal? How do we do all the stuff they do? It's a good direction for Lois and Jimmy and keeps them constantly involved in the story. Lois does learn that the games are rigged, just not in the human sense of the word, as the aliens have broken into the Fortress of Solitude and taken the bottled city of Kandor, which, coupled with Superman surviving the ship crashing onto him and returning for a fight, causes the high rollers of the alien empire to begin a betting war, raising the stakes more and more, but in Superman's favor instead of Grunha and his fleet. As the bets pour in, Lois and Jimmy get on with their own mission, with Lois planning on acting as Superman's second in his next challenge, and while all eyes are on her and Superman, Jimmy will be free to sneak off and find out what's really going on this ship, and live up to his Mr. Action nickname he keeps calling himself at this point in time. Superman soon reunites with Lois and his second trial begins, which is he must save the people of Kandor from 12 deadly supercomputer-powered arms who are trying to cut and blow their way into the bottled city as Red Sun baton-wielding battle droids wait to enter the city and kill its inhabitants. This is such a schlocky, over-planned challenge and I love it. It's proper old-school comic stuff and fits the era and aesthetic the comic is going for perfectly. On top of threatening Kandor though, Grunha also threatens Paris and New York, meaning millions of lives are on the line between Kandor and the cities of Earth. Throughout the book, Gale has done this great narration from a third-person perspective, giving descriptions of the events happening, you know, specifically how Superman is viewing them and how this is a much younger Superman, so he's very unsure of himself and the immense responsibility now shoved onto him with an alien warlord threatening the world. Lois relates to Superman's feelings, revealing that she became a reporter since she saw problems that she couldn't do anything about everywhere, so reporting on them and shining a light on them was her way of fighting it. This gives Superman the drive to keep going, as Jimmy meanwhile finds himself in the air ducts of the ship. Now this wouldn't be a Superman story without the inclusion of Lex somewhere in the story, and Luthor ends up contacting Jimmy through his signal watch, having hacked the frequency months ago, and he asks the photographer if he needs any help, which feels really out of character for someone like Lex Luthor, but I guarantee you it's because he wants something. He's got some sort of end goal here, and he's using Jimmy to acquire whatever it is he needs, probably some sort of alien technology or something. Superman, meanwhile, continues his next trial, defeat the things attacking Kandor, and he does so in a very cool and creative way. Clark knows he can't stop the arms all at once, since he can't destroy one and then move on to another. He has to destroy them all at once. So instead, he tosses his cape, the indestructible cloth he came to Earth wrapped in, over the bottled city, protecting it from the buzzsaws and the laser guns just long enough for him to smash the arms and save the city. Doing this wins Superman the second challenge, gaining the respect of the crowd, which is something that Grunha very much hates. So while Superman and Kandor are carted off by robots that look exactly like the mechanical monsters from the Fleischer cartoons, Grunha demands that the Daxamite be unleashed. Gale doesn't reveal who this Daxamite being is at the end of the issue, so it's possible it could be, a familiar face. It could be Largand or Sodom Yad or someone like that, but it's probably going to be a new character for this run. And I'm always excited when Daxamites get some page time. I think they are a criminally underused race. I can understand why people don't like using them, as they are effectively Kryptonians, only with a different weakness. But I'm really happy that they're getting involved in the storyline, and I'm really excited to see what Gale has in store for us in the final issue of her 3-part story. Now, Rainbow Rowell also returns this issue with her very cool backup focusing on Lois and Clark's work life and how Lois has taken Clark off reporting on Superman, thanks to a conflict of interest. This new dynamic begins to bleed into Lois and Clark's home life as both become cold to one another, and the next choice Lois has to make as editor-in-chief doesn't make it any easier, as while Clark learns Steelworks is dismantling its rehabilitation program for villains like Atomic Skull, Lois decides to take him off the Metro Beat, which means he can't cover that story. Rowell goes over both sides of the argument here very well, with both Lois and Clark giving good points against each other, but at the end of the day, Lois is in the right. Clark can't be writing stories about himself, and Lois has to make the paper be fair and balanced, both in its stories and how she treats her husband at work. She can't be made to seem like she's giving him, the best beat and the best stories and everything. Not only is Clark pulled from Metro Beat, but he also learns that Superman is to be the subject of a follow-up story on his battle with Atomic Skull that Mariposa, the new intern who is covering the new Metro Beat, wants to go over, wanting to cover Superman and Atomic Skull's history together. Clark is put on general assignment, which is basically bottom level stuff, and it leaves Clark dejected. And this is such an interesting side of Clark that we never get to see. One who's very frustrated, a little bit angry, but mostly disappointed, having lost his love for being a reporter thanks to covering nothing stories like dog shows and parades. And it's a very human thing to be disappointed and frustrated when things like this happen, like in a job or in your life somewhere. And I like that Rainbow is playing with that with Clark, being, Clark's an alien. How does he process this sort of stuff? And it's very interesting to see how he does. I'm also beginning to suspect that this is going to be a teachable moment for Clark, and he's going to be reminded that there is no such thing as a small story, as Lois says in this issue. And maybe that's part of why Lois is doing this outside of the conflict of interest, to help remind him that there's more to stories than just Superman and the action. There's the little things, basically. Just as things get boring for Clark in this beat, Atomic Skull breaks out of prison and Superman leaps into action, and unfortunately Jimmy and Mariposa get caught in the crossfire of the battle, and a frustrated Superman is forced to rescue them instead of dealing with Atomic Skull, who seemingly escapes. Something he is not happy about, and it's so weird seeing Superman just dump 2 people he just saved and fly off without so much as a word or checking in on them if they're okay. I'm really interested to see how Rainbow is going to round this off in the next issue, but I kind of don't want it to end, since it's such an interesting look at the Superman and Clark and Lois dynamic that we don't normally get to see, and I like that it's challenging things that we usually see in these comics where, Clark is allowed to cover Superman stories, Lois just lets him do it. I like that it's upending all of these things we usually get, and it's so interesting because of that. Action Comics again offered us up some fantastic storytelling with Gail Simone's Golden Age steeped tale of Superman battling evil aliens, using Superman's powers and intelligence in some very creative ways, while Rainbow Rowell's backup dived into a portion of Superman, Clark and Lois's dynamic we seldom see, and one I would absolutely love to see expanded upon in future books. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10.